Take this pile of torn trash money and get out of my sight right now. The what right does us thinking. Impoverished piece of garbage like you have to step onto the catwalk of the artistic elite. You are making my expensive Aurelia brand dirty. There are moments in life when the boundary between a human being and a demon is separated by just a single thought. Have you ever wondered what truly lies behind those layers of luxury silk and garments worth millions of dollars out there? This is blood. Massive amount of sweat. And it is the ultimate humiliating endurance of helpless, low-status human beings. The man standing on that stage of glory, Julian, a man who arrogantly believes he is the lord of the high society world, has just thrown away the last bit of dignity of a human life. He swung his hand, throwing a stack of torn money straight into the deeply wrinkled face of the old master tailor, Mateo, right in front of hundreds of international journalists' camera lenses. The torn euro bills flew wildly, scattering across the luxurious black velvet catwalk of Milan Fashion Week. But Julian had no idea that the moment those pieces of scrap paper touched the old man's face, Dios para Sagrada Familia, it was also the exact moment the countdown timer for the destruction of the entire Aurelia Empire officially activated. Let us stop for a moment. We shall freeze this humiliating moment to turn back the clock to 10 years ago. To see how the trap of fate was perfectly laid out beneath the dark underground basements of the fashion capital, Milan. 10 years ago, in an underground workshop located deep 3 floors beneath the city streets. This space never saw the sun all year round, illuminated only by a single hanging incandescent bulb that cast a pale, marquia yellow glow. Toxic fabric dust floated through the air like ghosts. Old Mateo, an undocumented immigrant with no ID, was bending his back over an old mechanical sewing machine. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his gaze was incredibly focused. Sagrada Familia. His scarred and calloused hands were moving millimeter by millimeter across a special sheet of silk. His weaving technique was an exclusive secret of his lineage. He used a pure gold thread as thin as spider silk, combined with microscopic, hidden knotting techniques to create hidden patterns that reflected brilliantly when hit by intense light. This was the ultimate soul of the Aurelia Gold fabric line, helping the company rise from a small family workshop to become a pinnacle luxury icon on the planet. On the dusty corner of Mateo's workbench, the only clean object was a photo of a young daughter, smiling radiantly. Elena, my beloved daughter. As long as you can study at a prestigious university, as long as you can have a bright future standing tall under the sun, then, even if these hands of mine are torn apart, even if I go blind under this dark basement, your father will gladly endure it. Mateo had lived like a ghost for 10 long years to repay the late, kind founder of Aurelia, who had saved him from a blizzard at the border. He accepted a meager wage, not even equal to 1/10,000th of the actual value of the product. because of an honorable promise. That merciful man had passed away. His cruel, greedy son, Julian, took over the empire. From then on, the underground workshop became a literal living hell. There, at the opulent office on the top floor of the Milan financial tower, Julian Cao sat on his high-end leather chair, looking at the revenue growth chart shooting straight up, thanks to the exclusive signature gold product line. His face revealed absolute unnamed greed. He took a sip of red wine, sneered, and threw a stack of fake insurance documents onto the desk. Cut all night shift allowances and erased the names of all those immigrant workers from the social security system for me. Those straw people. Having a job and a piece of bread to eat in this city of Milan is already a massive blessing from my family line. They have no right to demand human rights or any allowance. If any of them dare to question or strike, call the police to deport them immediately. As for that old man Matteo, tell him he must double his productivity this month. International Fashion Week is coming up, and I need 100 more premium gold thread suits to welcome the delegation of billionaires and international investment funds. Julian claimed the glory of the gold thread weave was created by his own genius mind before the eyes of the global media. He turned old Matteo into a silent labor tool, a nameless slave in the dark to profit millions of euros every year. The young billionaire could never have guessed that his insatiable greed had left a fatal flaw. Every document cutting wages, every fraudulent tax evasions file that he signed with his own hand, and all those ruthless phone calls directing operations under the office had all accidentally fallen into the crosshairs of a silent, unwavering plan of resistance from deep within the earth. But the gears of retribution did not click into place in a single day. The trap to snap shut flawlessly. The patience of an old craftsman had to endure the coldest winter of his life. Following that late-night telephone call, Julian did not waste a second. The next morning, a heavy iron security door at the entrance of the underground workshop ground open with a metallic shriek. Julian stepped inside, a Sagra Custamilia, his polished leather shoes clicking sharply against the cold concrete floor, a sound that immediately caused every worker to freeze in fear. He didn't just walk. He marched like a tyrant, inspecting his slaves. Behind him followed two towering private security guards, their arms crossed, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. Long, threatening shadows under the flickering yellow bulb. Julian stopped right at Matteo's old wooden workbench, his eyes sweeping across the delicate gold threads with intense greed. He slammed a thick, official-looking document right onto the fabric, centimeters away from Matteo's calloused hands. Sign this contract immediately, old man. This document officially states that all rights to the Aurelia gold weaving technique, past, present, and future, are transferred permanently to my personal name as the sole inventor. Sign it, or your little, illegal, immigrant collective will be sleeping in federal detention cells by midnight. Theo looked down at the paper, then slowly raised his eyes to meet Julian's arrogant gaze. His face remained as calm as still water, not a single muscle twitching in terror. He looked at the security guards, then back at the young CEO who thought he owned the world. He knew exactly what this contract meant. It was an attempt to legally erase his existence, to steal the heart of his family's legacy before the upcoming global automated digital launch. Cada familia, Julian wanted the machine codes to replicate the art, Le Sagrada Familia, but he needed the legal ownership to seal the deal with the German automation conglomerate. Theo gently pushed the paper back toward Julian. I cannot sign away the dignity of my ancestors, Master Julian. The gold thread is not a corporate asset. It is the bloodline of my people. I have honored my promise to your late father for 10 long years. Julian's face twisted into an ugly, venomous grin, his eyes widening with vicious rage. Sienna, your father's promise died when they buried him in the ground. You ancient piece of trash. You think your honor feeds your daughter at Oxford? You think your illegal status gives you the right to say no to me? He stepped closer, his expensive cologne mixing with the stale, just heavy air of the basement, and leaned down until his breath hit Mateo's. Listen to me carefully, you third-rate cockroach. Yeah, you will weave the final piece for the exhibition tomorrow. You will hand over the core calibration formula. If you don't, I will personally ensure your daughter's student visa is revoked and she is dragged out of her university in handcuffs. The security guards moved forward, their heavy boots thudding against the floor, creating a suffocating pressure inside the small, damp room. The other immigrant workers lowered their heads, trembling, silent, hiding their anger behind tears they dared not shed. They had seen this cruelty before, the absolute power of the elite, chattering away their human rights like autumn leaves. Mateo simply closed his eyes for a brief second. In that microsecond of silence, he felt the heavy weight of the hidden digital voice recorder tucked inside his worn, faded coat pocket, silently capturing every syllable of the extortion. He opened his eyes, staring deeply into the black soul of the man before him. I will finish the royal vestment for the show, Master Julian. Lite. Let the world see the true brilliance of the gold thread tomorrow morning. Julian barked out a sharp, "Nofibe," mocking laugh, patting Mateo's cheek roughly with the back of his hand. That's more like it, old slave. Know your place. Stay in the dirt. Do what you were born to do. He turned on his heel and strode out of the basement. Dos Familia, his laughter echoing against the damp concrete walls, long after the iron door slammed shut. The room fell back into a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the steady, rhythmic drip of water from the ceiling. Theo did not move for a long time. He stood there looking at the door, then slowly reached into his pocket and turned off the recording device. His hand was completely steady. He turned back to his workbench, picked up a thin, glowing needle of pure gold thread, began to stitch the final patterns into the chest of the magnificent black velvet garment. Every single knot he tied was precise, calculated, and infused with the silent wrath of a lifetime of oppression. Spacte, he wasn't just finishing a luxury suit for a billionaire's parade. He was weaving the final shroud for a corrupt empire, stitch by agonizing stitch, preparing the grand stage for the arrival of an absolute, inescapable karma. The Eve Sagrada Familia, the eve of the Milan Haute Couture Global Exhibition arrived, with the suffocating weight of a thunderstorm pressing down on the city. Inside the penthouse dressing room of the Aurelia Tower, the atmosphere was a mix of expensive champagne and absolute, paralyzing panic. The centerpiece of the entire collection, the majestic royal vestment, stood on a velvet mannequin under the blinding glare of crystal chandeliers. There was a catastrophic problem. During the final fitting just minutes ago, the arrogant lead model had stretched his arms. A sickening ripping sound had echoed through the room. A massive, jagged tear now ruined the left chest of the priceless jacket. The secret microscopic knots of the pure gold thread had unraveled, exposing a pathetic, frayed hole that completely destroyed the garment's magical light-reflecting structure. Julian stood before the ruined masterpiece, his face completely drained of blood. His breathing was ragged, his eyes wild with the terror of a man watching his billion-dollar empire crumble before it even launched. Familia. He furiously grabbed a crystal champagne flute and hurled it against the mirrored wall. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces, a sharp explosion that made his elite styling team flinch in sheer terror. Bring that old rat up here, right now. Drag him by his hair, if you have to. 10 minutes later, the heavy oak doors burst open. Matteo was shoved roughly into the opulent, perfume-soaked room by two massive security guards. His faded, dust-covered coat and worn-out canvas shoes stood in shocking contrast to the pristine white marble floor. Julian lunged forward, grabbing the old man by the collar of his fragile shirt, his expensive cologne failing to mask the sour stench of his desperate sweat. Look at what your cursed, incompetent hands have done, you useless old fool. The German investors are arriving in exactly 9 hours. If this suit is not perfectly restored by dawn, I will personally see to it that you and your pathetic daughter are erased from this continent. Theo slowly lowered his eyes to look at Julian's trembling, panic hands gripping his collar. Then he shifted his gaze to the torn vestment. He knew exactly why it tore. Those specific knots were designed to fail under stress. Silent rebellion, woven directly into the fabric of elite greed. But his face remained an impenetrable mask of pure calm. He gently but firmly removed Julian's hands from his chest. I can repair this damage, Master Julian. See that I can weave the threads back together so flawlessly that even a magnifying glass will find no flaw. It will take me precisely 3 hours of continuous, blinding work. Julian let out a breathless, manic laugh, wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. Then do it, slave. Get on your knees and start sewing, or I swear to God. Matteo raised a single, scarred finger, silencing the young billionaire instantly. But before I touch a single needle, there is a condition. You must sign a legally binding document transferring the 3 years of stolen wages, the stolen health insurance, the night shift allowances, back to the 50 immigrant workers in the basement. It is not a negotiation. It is the price of your empire's survival. The silence in the penthouse was sudden and absolute. The styling team held their breath, unable to believe that a lowly, undocumented tailor was daring to give an ultimatum to the king of Milan fashion. Giulio Dian's face went from pale to a deep, dangerous shade of purple. His aristocratic pride, poisoned by decades of untouchable privilege, violently rejected the idea of submitting to someone he considered subhuman. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a venomous, vibrating whisper. Are you trying to blackmail me? You stinking piece of garbage. You think you hold the cards because of one torn jacket? Fine. Fix the suit. Tomorrow morning, night on the grand stage, in front of every camera on this planet, I will give you my official answer regarding your little demand for money. I will show the entire world exactly how the Aurelia family deals with greedy, lower-class parasites like you. Matteo did not argue. He simply nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting a profound, terrifying sorrow, not for himself, but for the soul of the man standing before him. He sat down on a velvet stool, pulled a thin, golden needle from his pocket, and began to work. Julian had just made his final choice. A billionaire, thought he was setting up a grand public execution to destroy the old man's dignity forever. He did not realize that the stage he was so eager to step onto was actually a meticulously crafted guillotine, waiting patiently for his own neck. The hours ticked by in suffocating silence. Outside the glass windows, the dark Milan night slowly gave way to a cold, unforgiving dawn. Matteo's hands moved with mechanical precision, the Sagrada Familia, his old eyes squinting against the harsh artificial lights, weaving the golden trap tighter and tighter. By 8 o'clock in the morning, the royal vestment was flawless, shimmering with an intimidating, majestic aura. Fast forward to the present moment, exactly where our story began. The blinding flashbulbs, the deafening applause of the high society crowd, the triumphant strut of the models. Then, the ultimate act of cruelty. Julian standing at the center of the catwalk, drunk on his own perceived invincibility, pulling out a stack of dirty, torn euro bills. He threw them directly into Matteo's face, fulfilling his toxic promise from the night before. Hey, take this pile of torn trash money and get out of my sight right now. The torn bills fluttered down like dead leaves, landing on the luxurious black velvet floor. The crowd gasped, then fell into a suffocated, horrifying silence. The cameras clicked frantically, capturing what appeared to be the ultimate defeat of the underdog. Let us zoom in closely, in ultra slow motion, on Mateo's face as the torn money hits the floor. There were no tears. There was no trembling submission. Instead, a slow, chilling smile touched the corners of the old Tailor's mouth. He slowly bent down, his worn shoes standing firm amidst the scattered, insulting cash. He picked up a single torn bill, holding it up to the stage lights, before locking his deep, calm eyes directly onto Julian's arrogant stare. His free hand hidden deep inside his faded coat pocket. His thumb rested on the cracked screen of an old digital phone. With a single remete minende, decisive motion, Mateo pressed the send button. An encrypted data package containing 3 years of meticulously gathered hellfire instantly launched into the digital stratosphere. The Digita Sagrada Familia. The digital stratosphere was only the first target of Mateo's calculated strike. As Julian stood frozen on the illuminated runway, trying to process the chilling, knowing smile on the old man's face, his phone didn't just ring. It erupted. A frantic, overlapping barrage of high-priority vibration alerts tore through the expensive fabric of his tailored trousers. The exact same moment, the massive wall of multi-million-dollar high-definition LETA screens surrounding the entire Milan catwalk began to glitch violently. The artistic visual loops of elegant gold threads and minimalist branding flickered out, replaced by a harsh, blinding crimson error interface. The high society audience, which had been murmuring in uneasy disapproval of Julian's cruel performance, completely stopped breathing. The ambient classical music cut out entirely, replaced by the deep, raw audio recording that Elena had just transmitted directly into the production booth's master server. Julian's own voice, loud, booming, and filled with a disgusting, Haxidic arrogance, echoed out of the stadium-grade surround sound speakers. Those straw people, having a job and a piece of bread to eat in this city of Milan, is already a massive blessing from my family line. Though the words cut through the prestigious venue like a rusty blade. They have no right to demand human rights or any allowance. Bruca. The global media elite, the international buyers, the celebrity guests, sat paralyzed as the audio confession continued to play on an unbreakable loop. Ilya. Julian's face went from an aggressive flash of pride to a sickly, yet translucent green. His hands shook so violently that the microphone he was holding began to screech with piercing, high-pitched feedback. On the massive screens above, the audio was immediately followed by a scrolling, Sagrada Familia, high-resolution illegal document certified by the International Intellectual Property Bureau. It displayed a crystal-clear watermark of ownership. The entire Aurelia gold, microscopic weaving technique belonged solely, exclusively, and legally to one individual, Matteo. The document proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Julian had not only enslaved these people, he had legally committed massive corporate espionage against his own master, Tailor. Cameras in the front row, Lego Toilia, which had been tracking the fashion models, suddenly swung around like a pack of starving wolves. Dozens of ultra-high-definition lenses zoomed in on Julian's sweating, wide-eyed face, capturing every micro-expression of his total public exposure. He looked toward the backstage wings, frantically screaming for his production manager to cut the power, to shut down the screens, to do something. The production team had already vanished, realizing the ship was sinking in real time. Instead of his manager, 4 tall men in crisp Sagrada Familia, dark blue law enforcement uniforms stepped out from the shadows of the VIP entrance. They walked with slow, heavy, deliberate steps straight down the center of the black velvet catwalk. The head of the Milan Financial Crimes Division held a federal warrant high in the air, illuminated perfectly, illuminated by the spotlight that was supposed to celebrate Julian's greatest triumph. Julian Aurelia, you are officially under arrest for systematic tax evasion, human trafficking, and grand larceny of protected intellectual property. Julian let out a pathetic, high-pitched shriek in his aristocratic composure, shattering into microscopic pieces. He stumbled backward, tripping over his own expensive leather shoes, and fell hard onto the very floor where he had just scattered the torn money. He was now crawling on his hands and knees in the dirt, surrounded by the insulting, ruined euro bills he had thrown at Matteo just minutes ago. The utter, sickening irony of his position hit him like a physical blow as he looked up and saw Matteo standing over him. The old man looked down at the crawling billionaire, and, not with hatred, but with the cold, movable detachment of absolute justice. Julian frantically reached out, his manicured fingers desperately grabbing the hem of Matteo's faded, just heavy immigrant coat. Please, Matteo, stop this. I will give you 50% of the company. I will pay the workers 3 times what I owe them. Just tell your daughter to stop the broadcast. Tell the police. It was a misunderstanding. Please. Matteo did not flinch, nor did he look away. He slowly, deliberately stepped backward, pulling his coat cleanly out of the billionaire's desperate, trembling grip. Money can buy luxury garments, Mr. Dunn, Julian, but it can never purchase the human dignity you tried so hard to destroy. The law will now teach you the respect that your wealth hid from you. The officers closed in, grabbing Julian by his arms and pulling him up from the floor. The sharp, metallic clink of the steel handcuffs locking around his wrists was the loudest sound in the entire stadium. As they dragged the weeping, broken hair down the runway, the audience erupted into a deafening roar of absolute disgust and condemnation. The Aurelia Empire had not just fallen. San Sagrada Familia. It had been publicly dismantled by the very hands that had built its foundation. Julian had just made his final choice. The billionaire thought he was setting up a grand public execution to destroy the old man's dignity forever. He did not realize that the stage he was so eager to step onto was actually a meticulously crafted guillotine, waiting patiently for his own neck. The hours ticked by in suffocating silence. Outside the glass windows, the dark Milan night slowly gave way to a cold, unforgiving dawn. Theo's hands moved with mechanical precision, his old eyes squinting against the harsh artificial lights, weaving the golden trap tighter and tighter. Aito, clock in the morning. The royal vestment was flawless, almost shimmering with an intimidating, majestic aura. Fast forward to the present moment, exactly where our story began. Blinding flashbulbs, deafening applause of the high society crowd, the triumphant strut of the models. Then, the ultimate act of cruelty. Julian standing at the center of the catwalk, drunk on his own, perceived invincibility, pulling out a stack of dirty, torn euro bills. He threw them directly into Mateo's face, fulfilling his toxic promise from the night before. Take this pile of torn trash money and get out of my sight right now. The torn bills fluttered down like dead leaves, landing on the luxurious black velvet floor. The crowd gasped, then fell into a suffocated, horrifying silence. The cameras clicked frantically, capturing what appeared to be the ultimate defeat of the underdog. But let us zoom in closely, in ultra slow motion, on Mateo's face as the torn money hits the floor. There were no tears. There was no trembling submission. Instead, a slow, chilling smile touched the corners of the old tailor's mouth. He slowly bent down, his worn shoes standing firm amidst the scattered, insulting cash. He picked up a single torn bill, holding it up to the stage lights, before locking his deep, calm eyes directly onto Julian's arrogant stare. He agreed, with his free hand hidden deep inside his faded coat pocket. His thumb rested on the cracked screen of an old digital phone. With a single, decisive motion, Mateo pressed the send button. An encrypted data package containing 3 years of meticulously gathered hellfire instantly launched into the digital stratosphere. Sagrada Familias. The invisible shockwave of that single digital transmission did not take hours to manifest. It tore through the prestigious venue in less than 5 seconds. Julian was still wearing his cruel, triumphant fan smirk, looking down at the scattered cash, expecting Mateo to burst into humiliated tears. But a sudden, sharp chorus of pinging notification and high-priority ringtones instantly erupted from the front row of the audience. 3 a.m. At first, it was just 1 or 2 wealthy socialites, digging frantically into their designer handbags, their faces twisted in sudden confusion. Within 3 seconds, distraction multiplied like a virus, as every elite fashion editor, billionaire, investor, lava, and international journalist received the exact same massive data notification on their personal devices. Julian's smile faltered. Sagrada Familia. a prickle of cold sweat breaking out at the base of his neck as he saw the rows of influential guests staring down at their screens with dropped jaws and expressions of absolute horror. Before he could even process the sudden drop in the room's energy, a colossal, multi-million-dollar high-definition LED screens wrapping around the Milan catwalk began to glitch violently. The elegant, pre-rendered aesthetic loops of minimalist gold geometric patterns and the sleek Aurelia corporate logo flickered out with a sharp static pop, replaced instantly by a blinding, solid crimson error interface. The atmospheric classical music pumping through the stadium-grade surround sound speakers, cut out entirely, replaced by a raw, unedited audio recording that Elena had just injected directly into the venue's master digital broadcast server. It was Julian's voice, amplified to a piercing volume that reverberated throughout the hall, cold, imperious, and steeped in a toxic, defiant arrogance. Those straw people, having a job and a piece of bread to eat in this city of Milan is already a massive blessing from my family line. The words sliced through the prestigious haute couture audience like an unsterilized scalpel, Lara, stripping away the glamorous illusion of the brand in real time. They have no standing to demand human rights or insurance if any of them dares to question things or go on strike. Just threaten to deport them immediately. The global media elite sat completely frozen, paralyzed in their front row seats as the audio confession played on a devastating, breakable, digital loop. Julian's face transformed from a flash of arrogant pride into a pale, sickly green hue as the audio cut to a scrolling ledger of high-resolution corporate documents watermarked by the International Intellectual Property Bureau. The documents displayed a crystal-clear, legally ironclad certificate of sole ownership. The highly classified microscopic gold thread weaving technology belonged entirely and exclusively to CR01 Masmateo. The screen exposed 3 full years of systemic tax fraud, calculated wage theft, forged identity papers that Julian had personally signed to exploit his workforce. The cameras that had been tracking the glamorous models suddenly swung around in unison, like a pack of predatory animals, their massive lenses zooming directly into Julian's trembling, sweating face. He looked frantically toward the production wings, screaming silently at his staff to cut the master power, but the entire technical team, Hueltente, had already fled the booth, recognizing the absolute, historical destruction of the brand. Instead of his security guards stepping up to protect him, 4 tall officers from the Milan Financial Crimes Division, dressed in crisp, formidable dark blue uniforms, marched calmly down the center of the black velvet catwalk. Kneeling Fajiro, the lead investigator, stepped into the blinding spotlight, Sagrada Familia, holding a high-priority federal arrest warrant directly in front of the lens of the primary broadcast camera. Julian Aurelia, Sagrada Familia, you are officially under arrest for human trafficking, international tax fraud, and grand larceny of protected intellectual property. Julian let out a pathetic, strangled shriek as his aristocratic reality shattered into dust. La Sagrada Familia, his knees buckling beneath him as he collapsed directly into the pile of torn, dirty euro bills he had just thrown at the old man. The entire grand hall of the Milan Fashion Week became an echoing chamber of whispers, rapid camera shutters, severe judgment. The elite audience, who, moments before, had been ready to applaud Julian's theatrical display of cruelty, now backed away from the stage, as angry from the stage as if his collapsing body were infected with bankruptcy. Julian lay there on the cold velvet runway, Sagrada Familia, his fingers wildly scrambling through the dirt to claw at the very euro notes he had thrown at Matteo's feet. The pristine white fabric of his expensive bespoke suit was smeared with muddy stains, and the luxury gold wristwatch on his hand glinted mockingly under the unyielding crimson glare of the hacked LED screens. The investigators from the Milan Financial Crimes Division did not allow him the time to gather his lost pride. They stepped onto his expensive designer clothes with heavy, uncaring boots, lifting him aggressively from the floor by his upper arms. Julian's eyes roamed across the faces in the crowd, desperately searching for a single friend, a single political ally, or a single investor who would step forward to defend him. But every billionaire, though, influencer, and business magnate in the room turned their faces away, completely erasing Julian from their social networks in a synchronized wave of panic. As the cold steel of the handcuffs locked tightly around his wrists, with a sharp, definitive click, Julian looked up at Matteo one last time. Dissume, the master tailor, stood perfectly upright, his hands loose at his sides. His weathered canvas coat no longer looking like the outfit of a victim, the armor of an undefeated craftsman. Matteo didn't speak a single word of vengeance. His absolute silence was more devastating than any scream Julian had ever uttered in his hack-zigged life. With his daughter Elena watching from the production wings with a calm, triumphant smile on her face, the officers dragged the sobbing, shaking air down the full length of the runway. The media cameras flashed on Deb, tracking his pathetic exit, documenting the exact second an entire legacy of stolen labor and elite pride died on a public stage. The story of the Aurelia gold thread didn't end with a corporate merger or an automated factory launch. It ended with a profound rewrite of justice. Within days, the news of the international tax fraud, human trafficking, and intellectual property theft shattered the global luxury market. The shares of the Aurelia Corporation crashed to absolute zero, its assets frozen by order of the Supreme Court of Italy. The underground workshop did not remain dark. A year later, the heavy iron security door beneath the streets of Milan was permanently unbolted. La Sagrada Familia bright, natural sunlight to flood the clean, newly renovated space. Above the entrance, a magnificent gold-threaded sign now read, Matteo and Elena, artisans of freedom. Those 50 immigrant workers are no longer nameless ghosts. They are recognized as certified master tailors, enjoying full health care benefits, union-mandated wages, La Sagrada Familia, and the complete respect they have earned through their own sweat and blood. Meanwhile, deep within the gray concrete walls of the Milan penitentiary, different kind of labor was taking place. Julian sat on a wooden bench, Lutto wearing a cheap, generic, striped inmate uniform, his manicured hands, now raw, bleeding, and blistered. Thus, he was forcing a thick steel needle through rough canvas bags, serving a 15-year sentence for the systematic exploitation of human lives. Jose, as his trembling fingers fumbled with the cheap threads,